I'm noting all council members present, but I'm not seeing Vicky Fernandez yet. Are you here, Vicky? We'll wait another minute or two. Madam Clerk, Mr. Manager, have either of you attempted to reach Ms. Fernandez?
Yeah, she's calling right now. Hold on.
She's joined on the public side. I'm moving her over right now.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. We've reached the hour of 6 o'clock. This is Tuesday, June 15, 2021. This is the City Council of Woodland, now in session. And we've just returned from a closed session in which we had no reportable outcomes. So we will now proceed with our agenda. And I would like to ask the clerk to conduct the roll call, please.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Present.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Present.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Present.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Present.
Mayor Stallard?
Present. Thank you. Let's see. Who would like to lead us in the pledge tonight? Councilmember Garcia Cadena, would you lead us in the pledge tonight, please? Oh, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome.
All right, this brings us to public comment. This is a time when members of the public can address the council on items not otherwise on our agenda. Let me also take a moment to say that our meeting is being conducted virtually tonight in accordance with the governor's executive order permitting us to do so. That doesn't mean we don't welcome public participation. There are multiple ways to do so, and they are indicated on our agenda for tonight's meeting. So if you want to call in, email in, text, whatever, we'll be happy to hear from you, and we'll share what you have with the public if it's not live. And with that, Madam Clerk, are there any public comments for tonight?
I have 2 emails to read.
Okay.
And
proceed.
First one, thank you. To all members of the Woodland City Council, the residents of Spring Lake are being unfairly taxed for the maintenance of the sports park and facilities at the Senior Center, a community resource designed to serve the entire 60,000 plus citizens of Woodland. Our supplemental tax assessments pay for 83.5% of the total sports park maintenance. This Maintenance Communities District, CFD, is assessed to only 15% of the households in Woodland, 3,079 Spring Lake homes of the 20,500 plus total households. In addition, the sports park is not located within Spring Lake, but is located on the far side of the 113 highway and over 3 miles away from the Spring Lake development. I ask the current members of the City Council to reconsider this supplemental tax assessment that asks only Spring Lake residents to shoulder this maintenance fee. Maintenance costs for the sports park should be the financial responsibility of the entire Woodland community through a general small parcel tax on all 20,500 plus households. Spring Lake residents have been unfairly assessed for this fee for 15 years. I ask the members of the City Council to reconsider this disproportionate tax burden and to take action now to shift that financial responsibility to all households in Woodland. Thank you for your consideration. Joyce Hamaguchi, Spring Lake resident. And I have one more regarding Ralph Harris Park. Hello all. I hope that you can add the issues of Ralph Harris Park to your agenda. As a resident of this neighborhood of what was once a nice family park, it has now become a haven for transients. I hate being the person that is calling and complaining. I understand people need a place to go, but it's not right that we have to see the park trashed every single day along with the parking lot and along the fence near Norton Hall, to which some good neighbors walk through and pick up the trash. People sleeping in the playground equipment along with hanging their laundry or other items so that kids can't even go play there. Picnic tables that are being used as workbenches for the transients to take their bikes apart. It's basically become a bike shop. Then they leave bike parts there. We watched a guy with a sledgehammer beating a bike next to the restrooms. Picnic tables are left with daily trash even though there's a garbage can nearby. Wood, either from the awning or from trees, are being burned in the barbecue grills. There are syringes found in various areas. These people's dogs are running loose in the park, to which my husband has asked people to please leash them because my dogs perceive any animal coming at them as a threat, which they usually are. We've seen people sleeping along the fence at the far end. Same vehicles are parked at the park daily. People have driven their vehicles into the park as well. It seems because Harris Park is out of sight, then it's out of mind for the council. That's how the neighborhood feels. I've driven by other parks and don't see this going on. I used to walk my dogs in the very early hours at dawn, but now get so stressed out from seeing what is going on, it makes it hard. I'm too embarrassed to have visitors come over. My husband had a coworker come over for Memorial Day holiday, and they commented on what is going on over at your park. It's pretty disgusting. Our quaint little city is becoming a slum haven. Why? How much money is Woodland getting for all these people that have come out of nowhere? I've heard that the sheriff of Sacramento gave these people money, phone, and a one-way ticket here. So now we're stuck with this. Will the rest of California's transients be here too? I'd rather see the town broke than all of this. I also heard from one of the park employees state that they weren't allowed to dispose of any abandoned blankets or clothing because it might belong to someone. Apparently, some judge issued this order. You've built this encampment on Beamer, and all it will do is draw more issues to the city. I'm at a loss. I truly feel bad for the park's employees and the police. It's been a long time since I saw kids and families at the park. I used to bring kids to the park. I sure as heck wouldn't bring anyone there now. Please, what is the solution to this issue? Thank you for listening. Hope there's a solution coming. Sincerely, Nigel King.
Well, thank you to both of our members of the public for writing to our council. Because these are not on the agenda, they're not topics we can discuss at council tonight. But our staff has heard what you've written and will help wherever they can. All right, that concludes public comment. Let us move on to communications from council and staff. And council member Rich Landsberg, would you like to lead off tonight, please?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not much tonight, just a very quick summary. My committee assignments in the last couple of weeks consisted of cities and county 2x2, where the topic of marijuana cultivation continues to be a hot topic, and we're doing our best to protect our residents here in the community. Secondly, attended the Executive Commission on Homelessness, where we continue to discuss the issue not just of homelessness, housing needs, but people who are being forced out of their homes for different reasons, such as rising rents, evictions because the properties have been sold. So we're looking at all these housing issues throughout our city and the county. Other than that, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Landsberg. Council member Garcia Cadena.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a few updates on what I've been doing. I had the pleasure of touring our water plant, which was very interesting, along with Councilmember Fernandez. Had a lot of information. I attended an informational rally on the threat of fentanyl poisoning to our young people. That was really an eye-opener and something that I think we need to be looking into. I've toured the F Street Cannabis Dispensary in Davis and the new location in Dixon that is called Highway 80. I did a ride along with our code enforcement officer, Minnie Garcia, and boy, she has a heck of a job. Attended a small celebration for the Woodland Opera House's 125th anniversary today. That was really nice. I've also, for my role with the 150th celebration, I attended the Stroll Through History Committee's meeting regarding some window displays, and they will be doing I'm echoing, sorry. They'll be putting up a window display at the former Ludy's building. And just a quick reminder that there will be a Pride March this Friday at 2:30, starting at Pioneer High School and going to Woodland Community College. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Councilmember Vicky Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. Just want to congratulate all our Woodland graduates who graduated this last week or maybe a couple of weeks now that have resided in Woodland. So it's an exciting moment for them and their future. Hopefully they'll take advantage of the Woodland Promise program if they're going to be attending Woodland Community College. So congratulations to all the graduates in our city. Also, thank you to Tim Bush and Craig Locke and the Jacobs employees who headed the tour for Councilmember Garcia Cadena and myself. It was very interesting. Also attended the Collaborative for Woodland Youth. We had a presentation by a Superintendent of Schools, Garth Lewis, who gave us an overview of the need for childcare, and that is a focus for Mayor Pro Tem Vega and myself. And so we have heard the proposals and collaboration that they're hoping to commit to with the city and the county. We had the Head Start director, Gail Nadal, who gave us an overview of some of the proposals that they have in mind. So hopefully we'll be able to collaborate with them. Also, Noel Rodriguez presented some information on our equity, diversity, and inclusion policies that are being presented or implemented by the city of Sacramento. So we'll be having a presentation by the city of Sacramento coming into our collaborative for Woodland Youth. And in August, we're looking to get a overview of the Youth Master Plan. So just speaking of the Youth Master Plan, met with local teacher and director of a nonprofit called Brown Issues, also looking at the impact of our support for Woodland Youth and their outreach and their leadership in that area. So hopefully we'll continue to have that conversation with them and dialogue and hope that we can advocate for some of the needs of our Woodland Youth. And finally, just to remind our residents that the Redistricting Advisory Commission has applications available. So please take time, if you are so inclined, to participate in the process of redistricting for our elections and for our city. We would appreciate your support and your participation and hope that we get the community engaged in this process. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Fernandez. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. So I just want to highlight a couple of things that Councilmember Fernandez mentioned. Childcare has been a topic of discussion, as she mentioned, something that's very important to me personally and certainly in the community as we look at families who are working full-time and are looking for a safe place for their children to go. So I am very much looking forward to seeing more proposals come up in the community. I'm grateful that the county is going through an RFP process to accept applications from organizations who do this and do this well. I think it's with the way of life in the American family here with our residents changing, meeting the needs of childcare is really important. So we're able to get folks back to work, and children have the ability to be cared for and receive meaningful programming. I'm very much looking forward to the redistricting advisory committee and engaging community members. So please, if you're at all curious about that, interested in applying, please reach out to one of us or our city staff for more information. I'm looking forward to the Pride celebration here at the community college. I saw the agenda. There's some great programming, and I'm looking forward to representing our council there and presenting the proclamation as proclaiming June as Pride Month here. Other than that, it's getting hot out there. I know we have concerns over water and just simply folks wanting to get out. So I just get concerned when I see some of these heat waves and want to make sure folks are careful and hydrate. And lastly, congratulations to all the graduates. I love seeing all the graduation ceremonies around town. It's very heartwarming, and I'm excited to see more activity from our schools. One last thing, I misspoke when I said it was the last thing. I want to thank Kim and Ken for hosting a Q&A session for the Spring Lake community around the Community Facilities District. At our June 1st meeting, there were a lot of questions, a lot of consternation, some misinformation, misunderstanding, and a lot of concerns over disclosure of information. So I really appreciate City Manager and Administrative Services Director pulling together this very nimbly the Q&A session to address some of these questions. It was very well attended. I'm looking forward to having more of those as these topics come up where community members have very specific and personal questions. That'll be on Mayor Seller. Thank you. Oh, you're on mute, Mayor Seller.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega. And the Pride Day resolution is in your box at City Hall when you have a moment. All right, for myself, I'd like to mention that our county assessor, clerk, and elections chief, Jesse Salinas, along with Davis City Councilman Louis Frericks and the Yolo County Office of Education Superintendent, are trying to organize a county-wide effort to support our youth. While Woodland is addressing this need by partnering with our school district and developing a joint youth master plan, it seemed reasonable to indicate support for this effort, which is believed will lead to more grant funding for our youth. But I continue to believe that we have our plate full right here with our own Woodland youth, and our own process is doing the job we need to do. Secondly, as reported, I have joined with mayors across the country in urging that our citizens get vaccinated. It is believed that if we can get to 70% vaccination rate, that COVID will be contained and no longer be the threat it has been. And now for my Mayor's Minute. Today marks 125 years since the Woodland Opera House opened to the public. It is easy to take this huge civic amenity for granted. This theater is truly part of our patrimony. As we celebrate our 150th year as an incorporated city, it is worthwhile to realize how progressive our founders were when just 25 years later, a subscription effort to raise $25,000 was successful, leading to the building of the Woodland Opera House. And like life itself, it has not been without trials. The first incarnation was destroyed by fire, necessitating the construction of today's replacement. Competition from the movies and a lawsuit forced its closure in 1913. In 1937, a fire started by homeless encamped within the shuttered structure burned off the roof and destroyed the upper level of the stage house. Fortunately, the eccentric owner had fire insurance so that her roof could be reinstalled. But the building remained unused and forlorn, with all the fire debris and destruction left within the re-roofed structure. This was the case until 1971, when the Yolo County Historical Society paid $10,000 to buy the remains. Citizens led a cleanup effort that allowed occasional use until then local resident Bob McQuirk, known known for his purchase and early restoration of the Gable Mansion, developed a strategy. Assemblyman, then Congressman Vic Fazio, helped generate almost $2 million in financing that allowed restoration to proceed, a process that took almost 10 years, most under the leadership of then board president Jim Nolan. And now, after a year and a half of forced closure due to COVID, tryouts are scheduled for the musical Singing in the Rain, which will premiere in September. The reason I recount all this is to remind ourselves that life has always involved struggle, but that thankfully there have always been good people who cared enough about the community to do whatever is needed to meet its needs. Bravo, Woodland Opera House, for all the joy you have brought us over the years. And thanks to those who have helped this important civic institution overcome the many challenges that have at times blocked the path. May we celebrate this anniversary by each committing to live larger like those who have done this work. Mr. Manager.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think as everybody is fully aware, today marks the first time in nearly 15 months since our businesses and organizations in California can resume operations outside of the restrictions that have been imposed over the last year and a half through the pandemic. So significant milestone, and we are no longer subject to the color tier restrictions. However, we continue to track, changing guidance out of the California Department of Health as well as Cal OSHA that will ultimately inform, particularly in our workplace here, what additional health guidance will be in place, specifically around masking. And it appears that, guidance will be trending towards masking required only for those that are unvaccinated. So we anticipate, I think, Thursday of this week, Cal OSHA and CDPH to issue some new rulings. So we'll provide that as soon as it's released. We originally were hoping to transition to a hybrid council meeting this evening, but with sort of unsettled guidance around that and consultation with the mayor, we've opted to hold off until the dust settles on all these changes. So we'll be resuming to a hybrid and in-person for council format after the council recess. So look forward to that. And then also, as it was noted, the high temperatures we're tracking very closely this week. We do not anticipate the need to stand up a cooling shelter in our community as the temperatures are not anticipated to exceed 105 degrees for more than 3 days, and overnight temperatures will be dropping below 75. However, it will still be very warm, and we encourage folks, of course, to stay cool, stay hydrated. The library will be open for folks during the daytime if they're seeking refuge in a cooler, air-conditioned environment. Quick look at the long range, and again, apologize for the size of tonight's agenda packet, but moving forward, we should anticipate a much smaller agenda packet for your reading, with July 6th meeting being fairly light, but a high profile council item being the Research and Technology Park. We'll be presenting to the council an update on that project and condensing all of the feedback that we've received throughout the public input process, including the environmental review process, which will come to a close prior to that meeting. I do want to call attention, there is a public hearing on Thursday evening of this week before the Planning Commission to receive public comments for those that wish to provide comments to the city in public hearing format. And then on July 20th, we had originally hoped to have a tree ordinance update discussion with the council. We've been working very closely with Woodland Tree Foundation, who has spent a tremendous amount of effort, working with our community, advocating for the preservation of heritage oak trees, as well as other significant trees. Report back that we had a very productive meeting with them last week, and we think we've landed on a good path towards strengthening our tree ordinance in a manner that will encourage folks and in some cases require consultation with the city prior to proceeding with significant pruning or removal of trees. And so We will be working through refining the ordinance amendments that they've drafted for us and bringing that to the council likely in the August, early September timeframe. And then lastly, I want to call attention to a significant amount of time and effort will be spent over the July and council recess period, putting some thought into how to advance the pool project. We had a productive meeting with the infrastructure subcommittee several weeks back around a funding strategy to deliver the second swimming pool to this community. So we anticipate on the August 17th meeting outlining for the council a preliminary funding strategy as well as actions necessary to move forward with the next phase of refining the scope and ultimately delivering the project to the community. So some good topics coming forward. That concludes my remarks. I'll give it back to you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you, Mr. Manager. Many good things are happening. Delighted to hear that plan for the pool, moving the pool project forward. This brings us to our consent calendar this evening. It's items 3 through 21. It's an extensive group of items. Is there any item that any member wishes to remove for independent consideration or simply to make a comment on it before we proceed to take action? Not hearing any comment. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment on the consent calendar, Madam Clerk?
I am looking for, no one is raising their hand, and no, I don't have it.
Thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Mayor, I'll move the motion. I'll move the consent calendar.
All right, we'll take Councilmember Landsberg's motion and Councilmember Garcia Cadina's second. And if there being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
That concludes the consideration of the consent calendar. We now move on to public hearings. The first 6 hearings are Lighting and Landscape District annual assessments. This is a routine matter we have to handle. I'm going to move through them very quickly. Madam Clerk, I'd like to ask first, do we have any public comment on any of the landscape and lighting assessments to be considered tonight?
No, Mayor Stallard, we do not.
All right. I will open individual public hearings, but I'll conclude that there's no public comment unless, Madam Clerk, you advise me otherwise as we go along. And motions and second would be appreciated. So item 22, Gibson Ranch Lighting and Landscape District. The assessment is as indicated in the staff report. I'm going to open the public hearing. There being no public comment, I'm closing the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve the assessment as indicated in the staff report?
I make that motion, Mayor.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena moves.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
As indicated, thank you. There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on item 22.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
That concludes item 22. Item 23, the public hearing for the North Park Lighting and Landscape District. I'm going to open the public hearing on this issue. Having received no public comment, closing the public hearing. Is there a motion to adopt the staff report as submitted?
Fernandez makes a motion.
Okay. Thank you. Fernandez moves.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega, seconds.
Vega seconds. There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on item 23.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye. That concludes item 23. Item 24, public hearing on the Strang Pond Landscape Maintenance District. I will now open the public hearing on this issue. Having received no public comment, I'm closing the public hearing and ready for action on item 24. Stallard, the chair moves. Second?
Fernandez.
Okay, Garcia Cadena seconds. All right, there being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on item 24.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye. That concludes item 24. Item 25, public hearing for the Westwood Lighting and Landscaping District. I believe it's West Woodland, but in any event, as indicated on the staff report, I'm now going to open the public hearing on item 25. Is there any public comment? Having indicated that there is none, I'm closing the public hearing, seeking a motion to approve the action in item 25.
Landsberg.
Landsberg moves.
Second
And Fernandez seconds. There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on item 25.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
That concludes item 25. Item 26 is the public hearing on the Spring Lake Lighting and Landscaping District. Staff report has been presented to us. I'm opening the public hearing on item 26. There being no public comment, I'm closing the public hearing on item 26. And council motion, please.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Landsberg will second.
seconded by Councilmember Landsberg. There being no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
This brings us to our final, that concludes item 26. This brings us to our final district assessment, which is item 27, the Gateway Landscaping and Lighting District. Staff report indicates the action to be considered. I'm opening the public hearing. Having received no public comment, closing the public hearing. Council members, motion please.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Okay, I'm going to take Councilmember Garcia Cadena's motion and Mayor Pro Tem Vega's second. There being no further action, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on that.
You, Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes item 27 and our 6 landscape and lighting district assessments. Thank you, council, for your patience. I've been instructed previously by council that we have to do individual public hearings and votes. So that's why we go through the exercise we've just been through. Now, moving on to item 28, also a public hearing. This is the approval of the 2020 through 2024 Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Plan. This is a federal requirement, and it was quite a lengthy report in our council agenda tonight, which, by the way, the council agenda tonight was over 760 pages. So thank you again for your endurance. But is Dan going to present this? Is Dan Sokolow going to present tonight, Mr. Manager? Or are you going to introduce?
Probably no need for me to introduce. I'll have Dan Sokolow provide the staff presentation, and I may provide some concluding remarks after he opens it up.
Well, Dan Sokolow, first of all, you have labored in this vineyard for a long time for us and done really good work. And it takes the patience of Job to do what you do. So we thank you. And I heard this little rumor that you might even consider leaving us sometime next year. I hope you'll reconsider. You've been a great person on our staff. Mr. Sokolow. Are you there, Dan? I see your mic's unmuted. Be funny if you thought we were going to take a long time on the lighting and landscaping districts and you stepped away. It's pretty self-explanatory. We're under obligation to prepare a report, a 5-year report, dealing with issues such as access to housing and difficulties people have. Mr. Manager, you want to give a quick summary and then we'll proceed?
Yeah, well, we're hopefully getting Dan connected here. As part of the privilege of being a recipient of CDBG funding from the federal government, we're obligated every 5 years to update what we call a consolidated plan. And that plan is a process which communities must go through to identify needs within the community, particularly around housing and other employment and access to services. And as part of that plan, ultimately develop strategies and goals for us to pursue specifically with the CDBG dollars that are afforded to us by the federal government. So this is an obligation, as the mayor pointed out, that HUD imposes on. Sounds like Dan's back. Jurisdictions like this, in order for us to be able to access those CDBG fundings, we need to have the consolidated plan approved. There's a process which we went through to, in collaboration with other communities in the region this time, to seek more substantial sort of assessment and outreach and analytics to inform our plan, which Dan hopefully can speak to. Ultimately, tonight's meeting is about receiving public comment, of course, council questions and input. I would note that there are some very, important, significant findings that are called out in the report that are not, appropriate for us to just gloss over this evening. And in talking to some of the council members, maybe what we want to do is come back in the context of our housing element update in August or September timeframe. And provide a more robust opportunity for the council to discuss, what are our goals and strategies and intentions to help address some of the issues that are identified in the consolidated plan. It looks like Dan might be connected. I'll have Dan walk you through some of the significant findings and the process we went through to identify those findings, and then how it will inform the council's allocation of CDBG funding moving forward.
Are you there, Dan?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up, Dan.
I'm sorry, I had to switch computers. Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I apologize for the delay. So before you this evening is our consolidated plan for our 5-year period, 2020 through 2024. The recommended actions this evening are to open a public hearing to receive public input on the consolidated plan, to adopt a resolution approving the consolidated plan in substantially the same form as presented to the City Council, as well as the CDBG allocations for the first year of our consolidated plan. That's known as our annual action plan. The third action is to adopt a second resolution approving what is known as the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice as prepared by the Sacramento Valley Fair Housing Collaborative, which Woodland was a member of. The final two actions, submitting a consolidated plan, as well as our analysis of impediments to fair housing choice to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, known as HUD, and finally authorizing the city manager to execute any agreements necessary to carry out our CDBG projects. Real quickly, the consolidated plan is noted by the city manager. It's a 5-year plan. It's considered a strategic plan. Well, it looks at housing. It looks at community opportunity. There are a lot of goals in it, a lot of priority needs. We're not always able to achieve all of them, but we do go through a process since we receive CDBG funds on an annual basis from HUD. We're considered what's called an entitlement community. So we go through a process every 5 years to prepare a new consolidated plan. Along with that, we typically prepare a new analysis of impediments to fair housing choice as well. Really the key section of our consolidated plan is section 4, which is known as our housing and community development strategic plan. So we designate what's called high priority needs, as well as medium priority needs, low priority needs, and needs that we don't believe are present in our community. And along with that is we recommend some goals during our 5-year period for our consolidated plan. They involve things like construction activities. They involve public services, and it relates to kind of pretty broad area of the community. Not everything can be funded through CDBG. We receive about $500,000 a year. About 65% of that goes for infrastructure projects, and no more than 15%, which you're looking at $77,000 a year, can be used for public services. And we are very aware of the need of our service providers, both the nonprofits and at the county level, and sometimes the city with some of the services it provides. But nonetheless, we do try to include in our consolidated plan activities that are funded not necessarily through CDBG, but other funding sources such as our affordable housing funds, which we've done a lot recently, particularly with the East Beaver Way campus. Analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. Woodland was part of a collaborative. There were 3 counties involved, jurisdictions in Yellow County, the 3 large cities, Yellow County Housing, which is the public housing authority, and a similar situation for Placer County and Sacramento County. We decided to do a group effort. It was not that expensive. I think for Woodland, we paid no more than $5,000 to participate. We got a meaty document. It's almost 400 pages. There's a lot of findings in it. There's a lot of data that went in it, a lot of public input. People were able to respond to a survey. For example, in Woodland, I think there were about 138 community members who responded to the fair housing survey. In other communities, I think the total, was a couple thousand surveys. But there are some very, I would call them disappointing results in some of the data in terms of opportunity for inexpensive housing, relationships with landlords, people with disabilities having housing available to them and accommodate their needs, as well as, good neighborhoods, proficient schools, in some cases, poverty levels getting higher. So we looked at the region, and while I think in Woodland it's a little bit different than some parts of the region, we still have challenges here, particularly with housing, particularly with people maintaining their housing, also with opportunity in terms of good jobs, people wanting proficient schools. What I will note in Woodland is that people less than the region average, if they say crime is less than what the region number was, they tend to be comfortable in their neighborhoods. And I know that that's not everywhere in Woodland, but those were some of the really positive results from the assessment as well as the survey. So we have to put this all together and come up with a recommendation for council with high priority needs as well as goals for the next 5 years. And that's based on a number of things. It's based on survey results. For example, for the consolidated plan, there were 2 surveys we did. One was a resident survey. It was online, so it was easy to fill out. And then one click, it's sent directly to staff. The second survey was similar in a sense. It was easy to do, but it's a little bit different structured. It's our public service or our provider survey. And so some interesting comments in terms of what they thought gaps were. With our residents, we were looking at what are high priority needs. With our service providers, but at the county level and nonprofits, we're asking them what are the gaps that they see. So as noted in the staff report, there are a number of gaps. There are a number of high priority areas that are identified. I think probably the difference between this consolidated plan and our previous one is looking a lot at in terms of income opportunity. We had, I think one of our service provider talks about basic income, employment, training, homeless issues came up, which was not surprising, but nonetheless, I think the feedback was very important. And so what we've tried to do is we've tried to, as we looked at the high priority needs, we've tried to look at the staff recommendations based on a number of inputs we received from the surveys, from the fair housing choice, fair housing surveys as part of the analysis impediments to fair housing. So, what projects has the city funded in the previous years? What has the success been? What can we conceivably do during the 5 year of the consolidated plan, as well as other resources we can bring to bear? So having said that, I just want to focus a little bit on the recommendations, actually recall the goals for the analysis of impediments to fair housing choice. So and some of this is similar to what you may see in our housing element, but it's different. These are, looking at how to relieve barriers to fair housing choice, and a lot of it is economic opportunity as well. So you're looking at incentivizing development of affordable housing opportunities, expanding affordable rental opportunities. These are the kind of the broad goals, and there's specific actions under each goal. And the last goal is expand equity and access to economic opportunity. So I'm not going to go through the individual points for each one, but I think, it's clear there's things we want to be able to do. There's some things we will not be able to do. We've had a strong focus the last several years on affordable housing, housing for the homeless, trying to stabilize the homeless, give them services to support them in housing. And I think some of this is things we're already doing. Some of our challenges, some of it speaks to engagement of landlords as it relates to assessing potential tenants on a case-by-case basis, so they're not automatically rejected because their credit score may be poor because they went through a tough patch of life, or they may have not a violent criminal background, but they may have a criminal background that they've served time, they've gone through the process, because that relates to housing stability, getting people in housing and helping keep them there. But nonetheless, looking at our first year of our consolidated plan, so that's our action plan, we convened our CDBG review panel, which consists of Marco Lizarraga from our Planning Commission, Rashid Ali from our Parks and Recreation Commission, and then Kara Miller, who's a volunteer for our senior programs. We use them to assist us to review the applications for the first year, recommend activities for funding, and the recommended funding levels. So those are noted in the staff report. Most of the applications are recommended for funding. I have to say, on the construction side, these are activities proposed to be performed by subrecipients who have received funding in the past and have been able to complete projects. Not always as timely as we want, but sometimes there's hiccups along with construction projects, particularly when it's a subrecipient who doesn't do a lot of construction. Then on the public services side, all the applications recommended for funding received funding during the previous fiscal year. And one thing I would note is our city council has an internal policy that at least 40% of our public service funds be allocated to food and shelter programs. The proposed recommendation would result in 79% of that funding going to food and shelter programs. Lastly, I'd like to say is that we have, to some sense, played up our East Beamer Way efforts, because that's a significant project for the city. Not a lot of cities of our size are able to do something that, or have the funding in place or the patience to go through that. So I think that's something that's very relevant as it relates to our 5-year consolidated plan. Other than that, I will say is that this is long delayed. The last 15 months have been very interesting for staff. We've supported our EOC with Project Roomkey. We've also supported Community Development Department with the East Beaver Way campus, in particular the first phase, which was the construction and opening of the shelter earlier this year, and we still have some responsibilities related to that. So that's why you're seeing that probably a year after it should have come to you under normal circumstances, and I apologize. Also, I typically don't want to dump 500 plus pages on you. I know that's a significant burden, but I do appreciate, the council's patience in reviewing the documents, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dan, for the report. I'm going to open the public hearing first, so we meet that obligation. The public hearing is now open for discussion of the 2020 to 2024 Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Plan. Madam Clerk, does any member of the public wish to be heard on this matter?
No, nobody is raising their hand.
Thank you.
Emails.
The public hearing will now close, and we'll bring it back to the council for questions or discussion on these topics. Anyone wish to ask a question?
Mr. Mayor, I do.
Go right ahead, Council Member Garcia Cadena.
So first off, I just want to thank you, Dan, for all of this work. I mean, this was a heck of a undertaking of crucial information. I did have some questions though, and I'm looking at NA-45 and number 3. It says persons with mental, physical, and/or development disabilities, and then it just says the. So I don't know if something happened on some of these.
There are, Councilmember Garcia Cadena, there are a few sections that we are still finishing up in terms of providing data on that. So I do apologize. And I have to acknowledge that HUD is very eager to receive our consolidated plan. So in some sense, we went a little quicker than we would typically go, but we need to meet a deadline with HUD.
Got it. Okay. I noticed that on a couple that it was the start of a sentence. And then that was what I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question for Dan, but I did want to thank Dan for the comprehensive report, albeit a bit late because of the issues with the pandemic. However, in discussing this with the city manager this morning, we really need to pay attention to the impediments to fair housing in this report, because it's eye-opening, to say the least, how our city residents responded to the questions that were posed to them and how their answers were significantly different in some areas in the region. In particular, how they fear that rents are going to rise to a point where they're not going to be able to afford it, that there's a lot of fears in the community regarding housing. And I think that because of this, we as a council need to tackle these goals and see what we can do to come together as a community to focus on the goals that are contained in the report and address the concerns of our constituents when it comes to housing issues. Housing is also related, as you know, to employment, and it's a vicious circle. But I think that, giving this to Dan by himself is not fair to Dan. I think he would be the first one to agree with that we all need to focus on this plan and these goals, and that perhaps this particular topic, and I'm referring just to item number 4, which is the consolidated plan and the analysis of impediments, is that we need to have a workshop on just this topic so we can focus on how we're going to get through some of these issues and address our community's concerns about housing, about the issues that they've raised concerning their not feeling at ease about the future. This is what I took out of this, even though some information is about a year, maybe old, some of it older. I think the fears are even greater today in 2021 than they were in 2019. And we need to work as a council to work on these, to alleviate their concerns about housing, about job and opportunities. I noticed that some of the reports, we focus on Davis, Rockland, and Roseville. They're in much better condition than we are for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter to me. The reality is our citizens are hurting. They're fearful of the future, and we need to be addressing our constituents with some concrete goals and methodology on addressing some of these issues that they've raised. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And thank you, Mr. Landsberg. I will jump in and say my thanks also once again. This is obviously a very onerous process to get this report together and done. I think it was very wise to partner up with other jurisdictions in order to share the substantial cost of the preparation of this research. Most of the places I'm involved these days discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion as a regular part of their business. And I know my council members care about this just as I do. And this report gives us some important data. Home ownership is pretty low among our communities of color. Our Black families have a 17% home ownership rate, according to this report. That is pretty low. Our Hispanic families, I think we're at 57%, which is also lower than other communities. And, you know, it just suggests we have work to do and we need to have a strategy. And I think perhaps Councilman Landsberg has given us a good idea. So perhaps staff will take that back as well. Additional comments?
Mayor Stallard, I have a comment.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you. So, City Manager, this is kind of a thought that came up as I was listening to Councilmember Landsberg talk about having some focused efforts here. You know, back at the start of the year when we had our council retreat, we laid out a wonderful strategic plan. And the ask of you and your team is to develop some meaningful programmatic initiatives. This really feels like one. It's got a lot of the data elements that we discussed. Having as a way to measure and have measurable outcomes. I would love to participate in something like this, but it really hits housing and a lot of the equity and diversity issues that we've been hearing about. And this is, for me, seems like a really good way to take this on and really flesh out that strategic plan that we set out to achieve. That'll be all, Mayor Stallard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega. I would like to add to my remarks to say that, you know, we see what we need to do and what is not yet done. But I also think we need to be fair to ourselves and say our community, unlike many, has done a great deal in terms of housing our homeless. Not just in motel rooms, but also in housing such as our East Beamer project. And it's proceeding right away to develop the 61 units next door to it for people to transition to literally small homes of their own. So we're doing a lot for our community, but that doesn't mean that there isn't more we can and should be doing. Anyone else wish to weigh in before we conclude our discussion?
Councilmember Fernandez.
Councilmember Fernandez, please speak.
Thank you, Mayor Stallard. I just want to thank Dan for the amount of work that it entails. It provides us with a lot of information. But in my discussion with our city manager, Ken Hyatt, my concern continues to be community engagement. There were perhaps a little over 3,000 residents throughout the area who participated. Woodland had only 138 or so that participated. So not to downplay the results, but to look at how we can reach more community members so that we have community engagement, so that we're getting feedback from more of our community members on this type of information. So I want to thank you for the work that you've done, but also just want to recognize that there is a need for us to find a way to get participants in the process so that their voices are heard and that their concerns are heard. And this survey was very helpful. I enjoyed the analysis of so many different topics that are crucial to our community and that resonate highly with the need for us to examine how we're addressing the needs of our community. But you have a budget of 500,000 and 65% of that is going to infrastructure. So that leaves you 35% of that to work with. And I realize that it is between the city and nonprofits that we're able to accomplish so much in the city of Woodland. So I want to thank you for the collaboration that you must engage in with various nonprofits to make sure that we're providing for those needs. And I I want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Vega for reminding us that it is a topic that we need to look at, and it covers a lot of the strategic planning that we were examining at our retreat. So just thank you for the work that you're doing, and to our city manager and our community development staff who are working to try to find avenues to provide for our residents. And so I thank you for that, but I just want to make sure that we can engage as many people as possible in this process. And I had one more question, and it was regarding the, which I think I maybe asked once before, is that we have availability for 8 possible homeowners in the plan that was discussed. So for first-time home buyers. So just kind of maybe at some point, if I could get information, or we could get information, if there's a reason why there's only 8, the possibility for 8 people to apply for these, or is it 8 people who have responded, or I'm not really sure how that process, maybe, is it funding issues? I just remember.
Hernandez, I can address that. So we have a first-time home buyers program. We've been using repaid housing loans to fund the program. Currently, we have 8 families in what's called funded positions. So we can lend them up to $90,000, provided they're found to be income eligible and they complete a purchase of a home within 6 months of their income determination being complete. They also have to do home buyer education. That's a requirement. And also we can cover our consultant costs with NeighborWorks of Sacramento, which is our housing consultant for our first-time home buyers program. We can probably stretch it to another to 10, but in terms of time to interact with families who are interested, we have an interest list, but to interact with them, we typically take them off the list when we have available funding. I do what's called a home buyer orientation with them. I explain the program. I provide them with a very basic PowerPoint where we discuss things as basic as housing cost ratios, total debt ratios, working with a principal lender, other first-time home buyer assistance programs such as WISH that they can sometimes layer with our funds. Once they go through home buyer orientation, I will typically calculate their housing costs and total debt ratios. So they're telling me how much, what their income is for their family, what their debt is, because I need that to see what their capacity is. But at that point, we want them to go through income determination. In some instances, we do have some of our clients who have very limited income. They may not be able to progress beyond income determination. They may decide to drop out. In those instances, what happens is we take the next person on our interest list. We've got, as of today, 81 on our interest list. So we have a substantial interest in the program, and the vast majority of those on our interest list are existing Woodland residents. We do have folks from other jurisdictions who call us when we put them on the list. And so that's how the program runs. There may be an opportunity later this year, perhaps next year, where the county has some property and they're looking to do a small lot project. So we have held back some of our funds. This would be subject to city council approval, potentially assisting the county and the developer they bring in with this cottage type project to assist with first-time home buyer assistance. Assistance would be very cost effective. We wouldn't have to provide up to $90,000. It would be significantly less. So we do have some capacity with funds we've built up over the years. That's kind of a very quick synopsis of our program. I'd be happy to meet with you through Zoom or any other platform and kind of talk to you more extensively about the program, if that would be valuable at your convenience, certainly.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all your information, and I appreciate what you're doing. So thank you.
Any further council comment?
I think, does this require 4 separate motions? Can we do it all in one?
Ethan, can we do a consolidated?
You could, yeah.
I'll make the motion.
Councilman Landsberg moves that we adopt items 2 through 5, actions 2 through 5 of item 28. Is there a second to his motion?
Fernandez, second.
Councilmember Fernandez seconds the motion. Any further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, colleagues, for an excellent conversation. Thank you again, Dan, and the rest of our staff for all your work on this. We'll have more to come. That brings us to our last public hearing of the evening, item 29, amended and restated resolution for participation in the statewide community infrastructure program. And this is basically a little technical requirement of an existing program, so it shouldn't take us too long. Ken, you want to give a brief overview?
Yeah, I'll do a quick intro, and then Kim McKinney was going to add some to it, as well as we've invited James Hamill with California Statewide Community Development Authority to offer the council a little bit more perspective on the JPA's effort in assisting communities and private developers and creating tools like this to deliver the much needed housing projects in California. But as the mayor introduced, right, this is an amendment to a prior resolution that the council has passed that allows projects within our community to access the California Statewide Community Development Authority's toolbox, and specifically in this case, an infrastructure financing tool that allows smaller projects to access bond funding to help pay for infrastructure and or fees upfront for the projects, to allow these smaller projects to get financing similar to much larger projects do. So with that, I'll ask Kim to walk you through some of the specifics about the action that you'll be asked to take tonight, what it means for potential projects in Woodland moving forward, and then have Mr. Hamill conclude with some remarks from CSCDA's perspective.
Hi, thank you. The city manager covered a lot of the information that was included in the staff report. So this program is something that the city already is a participant in, that allows developers the opportunity to participate in a form of assessment district that allows them to issue bonds through this program that helps them pay for certain impact fees related to infrastructure. We needed to update our resolution for participation because the SCIP program has made some changes since we originally participated or signed up to participate in 2007. And they have some more flexibility in different types of financing that they can offer to developers. And this would be an alternate way for new development to pay for infrastructure and fees without having the city be the agency that forms the CFD and issues the bonds. Instead, the SCIP program through CSCDA does the financing. So James Hamill is on here from CSCDA. He's just going to walk you through a little bit of the difference and what that means for developers.
Thanks, Kimberly. Yes, James Hamill, Managing Director with the California Statewide Community Development Authority, and thank you for having us tonight. Ken and Kimberly really went over the meat and potatoes of this. Really what this is, this program has been in place since 2003. This is the next evolution in terms of adding another tool of community facilities districts that can be used as part of the program. What it allows is different fees, more phasing, and more flexibility when it comes to development within your city and other cities across the state. So multiple cities, we're going back to all the cities who have already adopted the resolution, including, in the surrounding area cities, Sacramento, the county of Sacramento, West Sacramento, are all adopting these updated resolutions. So it is something that all agencies who have participated for a while are doing at this point in time. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hamill. Questions, colleagues?
I just have one question for
Go ahead.
our guest, James. assuming that the president gets an infrastructure bill passed at any level, would this impact your program for providing additional resources for the community?
It would be, and we've looked at that, and obviously it can change in many different ways, but this would be supplemental to that, so it would be helpful into any infrastructure bill that's passed at the federal level. So it'd be supplemental on the local level, and then any federal funds that came in from an infrastructure bill.
Right. Thank you.
Additional questions? As I was mentioning to the manager before our meeting tonight, I was first vice president of the California State Association of Counties when we adopted this program in partnership with the League of California Cities. So obviously it's been flexible and it's survived through recessions and other things to continue doing good. And as the staff report indicated, our own Gateway Shopping Center utilized it to pay the substantial upfront fees, and thus allowing them to reserve their cash for the actual project itself. Any additional questions or comments? I haven't opened the public hearing on this, so let me open the public hearing. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this item?
No, Mayor Stallard.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I'm closing the public hearing. Council, what's your pleasure?
Councilman has a question here. Can I just, before we move on, just have a quick question to Mr. Hamill. Just an overview of the program. I guess my question is, eventually the fees are passed down to the homeowners in some manner, right? And so my question is, there seems to be a lot of concerns with some of the assessments that are being undertaken by communities in our, for example, Spring Lake. So reading through this, that was my question. If residents have questions or concerns, when it comes down to their portion of paying for these, am I correct in assuming that that's what happens? Who can they reach out to, since it won't be run by the city or managed by the city? Will residents have access to your agency if they have questions, or do they, who do they contact? So I guess that's my question.
It's a great question, and it's something on the property tax bill. It will state CSCDA SCIP, or Statewide Community Infrastructure 2020 or 2021 A, B, or C, whenever we issue it, and then it will have our phone number on there. So they will reach out to us with any questions they have, if they want to prepay it, if there's any issues with it, concerns, if they need a payment plan. We've had some of those this recent year with COVID, where some people have had to go on a payment plan in various jurisdictions that we've won. So we work through it with them, so it doesn't fall back on the city or city staff to handle those types of issues.
Thank you.
Right.
Mayor Stallard, I have a follow-up.
Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for Mr. Hamill. So outside of the listing of the assessment on the tax bill with the phone number, is there any other communication to homeowners about the assessment?
So the program does require that there is bold disclosure in any property that's sold from the original either developer of the property or any future homeowner that this assessment is on the property itself. So there is a required disclosure that is part of the bond documents that are originally signed at the outset that are required to go to every property owner down the line, and it just follows suit with every new buyer of a property that comes up.
So the disclosures follow the property. So if it goes from developer to home buyer 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, as it gets the property exchanges hands, the disclosure requirements are the same?
Correct. That is correct.
Thank you for that.
Appreciate those good questions. Any more of them? Council, your pleasure.
Well, first, let's thank Mr. Hamill and Ms. McKinney for their help in this. I wasn't quite clear what it was. Now I got it. I got it now. So thank you for clearing that up. So motion to approve the resolution.
Councilmember Landsberg moves the adoption of the action for item 29. Second.
Second by Mayor Pro Tem Vega.
Thank you. Further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye. And this would be the time when I'd like to thank Ms. McKinney and Mr. Hamill also for helping us with this tonight. That concludes item 29. We now move to item J on our agenda, reports of the city manager. We have 2 items remaining. The penultimate item, item 30, modification of the transit occupancy tax deferral repayment ordinance. Mr. Manager, are you going to report out on this?
Yeah, I'll cover this one. So the city council at the early days of the pandemic last year took several actions to assist businesses impacted by the pandemic. Specifically, the hotel industry, as we know, has been heavily hit. The council passed an ordinance last year that allowed the hotel operators within our community to defer the transit occupancy taxes, the very limited amount of taxes they were receiving during that time. Defer those payments that ultimately would come to the city and instead retain those transit occupancy tax receipts that they collect from the hotel stays and allow them to effectively use that funding to help cash flow their operations, keep people employed, and keep the lights on. We sunset that deferral such that October of last year, October 1, all hoteliers, actually October 31st, I believe it was, the hoteliers needed to, no longer were allowed to defer the TOT payments and needed to start repaying those deferred amounts to the city with a sunset effectively of June 30 of this year to have all of those deferred TOT payments repaid to the city. There are several hotels that have reached out and indicated that, obviously the pandemic has been much more protracted than they expected and have asked for consideration to the city to allow those deferred TOT payments to be extended for another 6 months to allow them to, again, continue to fully reopen now and get the cash flow they need to repay those receipts. So the recommendation before you this evening is to adopt an amendment to the ordinance to allow the deferred TOT during that payment period last year to be deferred for an additional 6 months. And we'll work with those hotel properties that do have an outstanding balance. I'll note that the majority of them have now actually caught up and made those payments, but not all of them have. So our recommendation is to have the council pass the ordinance and allow us to work with those properties and help them continue to fully recover from the pandemic. Happy to answer any questions the council has.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Madam Clerk, are there any comments from the public on this?
No, Mayor Stallard.
All right. Pretty self-explanatory, council. Shall we do this or you have questions? I think we can go right to motion. I'm willing to move that we do the 6-month extension as recommended by staff. Is there a second?
Fernandez?
Fernandez seconds. Is there further discussion? There being none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Mayor Stallard.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was a humane thing for us to do. And we're just so excited to see all of our business coming back from the COVID issues which have been imperiled them. It's just a joy to see the recovery occurring. But it isn't over. It isn't completely over. And some people are still dealing with a lot of impact. So keep eating in our restaurants, please. All right, this brings us to our ultimate and final item of the evening, and that is the serious matter of adoption of the fiscal year 2021-2022 budget. As the council will recall, we had a detailed presentation on this just a few weeks ago, and I've asked staff to highlight any changes or anything they would like to bring out tonight, and then it's in our hands to take additional steps. City Manager Hyatt.
Yes, so it's our pleasure to, after 4 months of budget presentations and discussions and feedback with the council, to finally present to you this evening in your packet the final fiscal year 21-22 budget. As the mayor indicated, we provided a fairly thorough background of the proposed budget that was introduced at the June 1st meeting. There are a couple very minor amendments that have now been incorporated into the budget that's in your packet this evening. I do want to highlight, first of all, after we introduced that preliminary budget to the council, we heard word from SACOG that there were additional grant dollars that they would like to work with us to effectively advance, allowing us to use more grant dollars in some of the capital improvement projects, roadway projects in the coming year. And so we have now integrated those additional grant funds into the proposed budget, offsetting some of the other Measure EF dollars that were assigned for those projects. So that has been incorporated into the proposed budget in your packet. Additionally, different than what was presented in the agenda packet, but consistent with the council direction, was an amendment to the Measure J spending plan to incorporate an additional $500,000 in reserve set aside from the Measure J fund balance to go towards the swimming pool project. So that would bring the total reserve fund balance out of Measure J towards the pool project to $1,375,000 towards that pool project. And as I indicated earlier this evening, that is not the full funding source of the project. We've got several potential funding sources that we are pulling together, and we'll ultimately look forward to presenting to council in the August timeframe. We believe a funding strategy to deliver that pool project in the coming years. So that has been incorporated into the proposed budget. In summary, the spending plan that's before you in this budget comes to $205 million and includes three key categories: $156 million in city operating funds, $23.7 million in capital project funding, $25.8 million in debt service obligation payments. We also included, with the budget flexibility that we have, as we discussed at June 1st meeting, with the healthy reserve fund balance and better than projected revenues this past year, we recommended and council ultimately incorporated $2.6 million in one-time funding allocations as part of this budget, as well as $659,000 in ongoing budget augmentations, primarily in additional staff resources. So that represents just over a 10% increase over the prior fiscal year budget. But I do want to highlight the budget would yield at the end of the year a 28% reserve general fund reserve fund balance, which is in excess of the council's policy for 20% reserve fund balance. So we continue to maintain a very conservative budget, but as was pointed out, the 5-year forecast does show significant potential deficits moving forward. So we're tracking that very closely. So with that, I'll give it back to the council for any questions that you might have. But consistent with the council goals towards maintaining a structural balanced budget, being very careful of how we intentionally invest any budget flexibility that we have. We believe the budget that's presented before you for next year achieves those goals and provides for the necessary investments in our community to continue to deliver quality services, but at the same time being fiscally prudent. So with that, I'll conclude the presentation and turn it back to council.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council members, are there questions? I'm just going to call you. Councilmember Garcia Cadena, do you have questions about the budget at this point?
No, Mr. Mayor, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you,
She's frozen.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Councilmember Vicky Fernandez, do you have questions about the budget at this point?
Yes, we do actually have a question that I seem to have overlooked on the city organization sheet, page 756. We have a deputy community CDD or community development director position. We had one, and then it has proposed for 2021 to 2022, 0. Normally in that middle sheet in the section where it says proposed changes, there's usually a added or minus. So I didn't see that. That position is no longer needed or no longer required. I'm not sure. I missed that earlier when I went through this. So I would maybe could I ask for clarification on that position?
Yeah, certainly. So as part of our staffing reorganization over the past year, we identified the need to eliminate that position moving forward. So as part of this year's budget, that position will be eliminated and is currently occupied and working with that employee to transition during the course of the budget year. So that was part of our budget balancing plan as part of last year and part of the reorganization that we've pursued throughout this year.
Okay, does that answer your question, Councilmember? Thank you. Any additional questions, Councilmember Fernandez?
No, that was just the one that kind of stood out because it's not highlighted in our section there. So just wanted clarification and wondering how that department will be impacted by the loss of another employee. I'm sure they're busy.
Thank you. Councilmember Vega?
Thank you, Mayor Sellard. So thank you, Kim, for such a thorough summary, and I appreciate all the exhibits and the how clear it's all laid out. I appreciate that. I do have a question about the fire station relocation. We had talked about that being an outstanding item, and as I think about a lot of the concerns that Spring Lake residents voiced to me, that fire station comes up really often as a infrastructure need. So my question is, was that in this packet and I missed it? And if so, where do we stand now with the planning for that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. There is, consistent with what was presented in June 1st budget, $1 million reserve, general fund reserve recommended to be allocated towards the future fire station relocation project. Again, that is only a drop in the bucket towards the ultimate funding needed to fund that roughly $10 million project. And as part of the coming year, it'll be part and parcel with our analysis and funding strategies to deliver the pool project, a project where we do have anticipated revenues primarily from developments that will go specifically to help cover the cost of fire station relocation project. So over the course of the next budget year, we'll be providing a projection of our revenue from those development projects that can go to assist in funding the fire station project. But at the same time, we need to circle back with the council and get the new council up to speed on what the project scope was, how that fits into our service delivery model. So we'll be working with the Public Safety Subcommittee to take a fresh look at the service delivery impacts the relocation of that fire station will provide, and if that's the best delivery model for us. So still some work to be done on the scope and how that fits with our future service delivery, but that'll be a top priority again for the next year for us to work with the council on.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, and I just want to, challenge the staff and really look at innovative ways to revamp our service delivery model. And I think every industry has certainly seen a lot of changes in the way they deliver services and care. Heck, just grocery delivery, so many things have changed, right? So I think this is such a great opportunity, especially given the hefty price tag of the capital investment, the ongoing management, that we really look at what is the best way to serve our residents. So I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to discussing that further. Thank you. Oh, Mayor Stallard, you're on mute.
Well, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Vega. And now it's Councilmember Landsberg's turn.
Oh, I don't have any additional comments. Staff and the city manager have answered the questions I previously had about the budget, including some of the money set aside for some of the capital improvement projects. I disagree that $1 million is a drop in the bucket. If you don't need it, I'll take it. $1 million is a lot of money and to this community, and it should be cherished, and we got to figure out what the best use of that $1 million is.
Thank you, Councilmember Landsberg. Are there any additional subsequent questions that have come to any of you before we proceed to a motion?
I'm sorry, Councilmember Fernandez, just one more quick question. Ken, City Manager Hyatt, I just have a quick question. You mentioned our general fund. Did you mention the percentage in that fund again? I overlooked or didn't write that down.
The reserve fund balance?
Yeah.
Yeah, 28% is where we would end at the end of the year based on the proposed budget.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I did have one more comment. I forgot to say this. It was on my mind. It's this. I remember a little over a year ago, we weren't feeling this good about our budget, you may recall, based on the issues of the pandemic. So I think we fared better than we anticipated. And I think we should be feeling good about where we are. Could be better, but we expected worse. So thank you for that.
And thank you, Mr. Landsberg. I actually was going to say the same thing. I think there's a lot of room for gratitude in this budget. We have survived the pandemic. I think we're poised for thriving in the future. It doesn't mean we can get wild and crazy here, but at the same time, I think we can be very proud of our city management, that it's managed conservatively with care and thought to all the dollars in our trust. And we continue to do what the public expects us to do, the best of our ability. And we have a lot more wants than we have dollars. But, through careful management, we get to those things that are important to us, like that new pool and eventually a replacement fire station. So meanwhile, we keep on moving on with our road rehabilitation and eliminating irritants for our people. So I just feel like there's a lot to be grateful for. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Avis, and all the team for what you've done to make this budget a reality. But it isn't a reality in law until we adopt it. So somebody want to have the honor of making the motion.
Mayor, I didn't hear the public yet. Did you go to the public yet?
No, I didn't. I'm going to take Mayor Vega's motion. And anyone want to second it? And then we'll go to the public before voting.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the budget, but I have neglected to ask the clerk if there was public comment on the budget. Is there, Madam Clerk?
No public comment.
Thank you. There being no public comment, is there further discussion on the motion as made and seconded?
No.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Vega?
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye, and thank you.
Mayor Stallard?
Aye.
Thank you.
Well, that means the budget is adopted. We've come to the end of our agenda. I don't believe there are any memorial adjournments tonight. I do want to observe that in that consent calendar we adopted this evening was a lot of important matters affecting our community, and one of them is an emergency policy on water. We are looking at pretty significant drought conditions, and we're all going to have to do more. Right now, we're expected to be reducing our use by 10%. So be thinking about that, friends and fellow citizens. Be conservative in your use of water. It's going to make a big difference for all of us. With that, we are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.